The first bill under the calendar for the day is House File 4024. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 4024, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to higher education, the first engrossment.
There are amendments at the desk. If there are no objections, we will let the author explain the bill before we act on the amendment. The member from Winona, Representative Pulowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. House File 4024 is the Higher Education Policy Bill. It contains primarily 5 bills. House File 3985 by Representative Wolgamott. This clarifies the U of M and Centracare facility. This was passed in the last higher education budget bill of 2023. This just clarifies how that would be used. House File 4024, this is by Representative Pulowski. This is the Office of Higher Education Policy Bill. This is primarily technical changes. However, Representative Rarick and Representative Hansen worked together on the language dealing with sexual assault reporting. I thank them both for working both in committee and out of committee on that. House File 4175, again by Pulowski, adds the word energy to the list of eligible programs for in-state workforce. This is supported by the Minnesota Rural Electric Association. The electric co-ops are in particularly promoted this section. House File 4343, Representative Coulter. This regulates online program management companies. We had extensive testimony on how these companies were misused in Minnesota, and this clarifies and hopefully will save a great deal of money dealing with how we regulate the use of these companies. House File 4565, Representative Hansen. This is the RISE Act. This requires schools to have a policy for students to report a documented disability. And again, we took testimony in committee on this. And Madam Speaker, this is the bill, and I believe we have amendments. But I would also remind the Speaker that perhaps after third reading, we have some members who wish to speak to their sections of the bill.
Representative Rarick offers the following amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Rarick moves to amend House File number 4024, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A4.
I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Rarick, who will explain the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. This is a really, really simple amendment. As we were going through the markup process, we did what committees do, and we dug in kind of deep. We were asking a lot of questions about the piece that the University of Minnesota brought forward, and they had some language in there that was a little unfamiliar to me. So it was endowment scholarship. And we kept asking, what's endowment scholarship compared to just a scholarship fund, which is what we typically do here at the legislature. And the answer was they were going to put an undisclosed amount of money, I don't know if it was the whole 10 million or less, into an endowment, into a fund, and only use the interest to then give out scholarships. Well, that's not the intent. That wasn't the intent. And so we were going to try to fix it in committee, but here I am on the floor. We're going to do it here. So, members, I ask for your support. This is correcting what should have been in the bill to begin with. This is simply changing it back to a scholarship program, a scholarship fund, and not an endowment fund where the money sits in the endowment and collects interest, and then the scholarships are done out of the interest. So this is reverting it back, and I thank Chair Pulowski for working with us and look forward to your support.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker, this was heard in committee, and I would ask the body to accept it.
Further discussion. There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion prevails, and the amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. I recognize the author of the... The clerk will report the amendment.
Rarick moves to amend House File number 4024, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A5.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Wright, Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, members, in that same conversation that we just had about the endowment scholarship, in that same amount of money, it was a $10 million gift basically to the University of Minnesota. And we kept asking them, what exactly are you going to be using the money for? Can you break it out for us? And so this amendment actually is in response, because I did get an email, and it is exactly what you've got a piece of paper in front of you that talks about the Central Care Project for the University of Minnesota up in St. Cloud. And it basically is exactly what they told us they were going to use the money for. It was $2 million for scholarships, $2 million for the school startup and facility training, $4 million for residency programs, and $2 million for the Research Institute. And so that is what this amendment does. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Discussion. Representative Pulowski.
Madam Speaker and members, this would be more appropriate in a budget bill. This is a policy bill. I have spoken to Representative Rarick. We have a budget bill that's coming up. If she wishes to offer the amendment in committee where we can take testimony on it, that would be the proper place, not here. I would ask the body to vote no.
Discussion. Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I'd ask for a yes vote, obviously. I think that we can talk about it here. I did hand you the document that came from the University of Minnesota themselves to say how they wanted to use the money. And it's just kind of tidying up what we're going to be allowing them to do with the money. We've had a little issue, just a little issue with the University of Minnesota and transparency, and explaining to us what they're going to be doing with the money and getting us reports back. So this is just making it yet more clear. I'm happy to have that conversation again if this amendment fails back in committee, but I'd ask for your support and we can just take care of it right here. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. No. The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. Representative Robbins, the clerk will report the amendment.
Robbins moves to amend House Law Number 4024, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A7.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speakers and members. I'm bringing this amendment to help solve a problem that came to light in committee this year. Last year, we had created the foster grant program that would provide scholarships for foster students for $4 million, and that was inadequate. There were way more foster students who qualified and wanted to take advantage of this scholarship, and they came to committee and gave incredibly compelling testimony about what this scholarship means to them. And so I really worked with our nonpartisan staff to think about how can we solve this, and it turns out there's a really good solve. Last year we also created the North Star Promise Act, which is free college last dollar scholarships for anyone under income of ages of income of $80,000 or less, and that program on an ongoing basis is going to get $49.5 million a year, but for this year, they gave it $117.2 million. So working with nonpartisan staff, I realized there is a whole lot of money in the North Star Promise program that's one-time money, and we investigated, so what is that actually being used for? And because the North Star Promise program doesn't even kick in until this fall, and they really only need the $49.5 million for the North Star Promise program. So where is this extra $67 million going? Well, it turns out it's going to something that we kind of made up out of whole cloth called the Pell Plus grant. And when you read the statute of what these Pell Plus grants are for, there's no limitation on it. The students can use it for anything they want. And there's already money for living and miscellaneous expenses scholarships. There's money for housing. There's money for books and other support. So this is just sort of an extra pot of money that the commissioner of OHE can use to give out scholarships for whatever they want without limitation, including they could use it to buy a car or go on spring break or do whatever they want, buy clothes. And so that's all good things potentially, but when we have foster kids who are waiting to get their scholarships and we've put them on a waiting list, that is not a good use of this $67 million, and we're only asking for $6 million of it. So members, this is a super important amendment. If you were in committee it was across the board bipartisan support for helping us foster students, make sure that everyone who wanted to get a scholarship could participate. And this extra $67 million for the Pell Plus program, that's one-time money, there's no better use for it. So members, I ask for your support for this, and then I would ask for a roll call. Thank you.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Discussion. Representative Pawlowski.
Madam Speaker, members, this is clearly a budget item, not a policy item. We don't have any appropriation or any target in this bill for anything like this. I have spoken to Representative Robbins and said that if she wishes to offer this in committee, but this will be the core of the higher ed budget bill. I also want to compliment Representative Hicks. She's been the prime mover and shaker on this foster grant program. So the discussion will be in the Higher Ed Committee. It will be part of the budget bill. I would ask members to vote no here.
The member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Robbins, for this amendment. The Fostering Independent Grant Program is a little personal to me. As some of you may know, our 18-year-old daughter is part of the cohort that is eligible for the Fostering Independence Grant program. She's not going to utilize it next year when she goes to college. We are financing her education a different way, but this is an incredibly important program, and I appreciate the suggestion, Representative Pawlowski, that this is going to be taken care of. But right now in this bill, we're telling these kids that we made a promise to from the state of Minnesota that you have to wait, that you're on a waiting list. And we can solve this problem today. It's really disappointing to me the priorities that as a state government we have done. With an $18 billion surplus, we spent the surplus and we have checks we've written to these foster kids that we're not cashing, that we're putting them on a wait list. So I think we should solve this problem today. Representative Robbins, thank you for the effort to try to solve it today. I hope members vote green on the amendment. Thank you.
Further discussion. Representative Pawlowski.
Madam Speaker, I cannot avoid a teaching moment here. Members, there is a difference between a policy bill and a budget bill. This is not a budget bill, it's a policy bill. It would be inappropriate to put this into this bill. So members, as we now move toward the end of session, let's be clear what policy is and what budgets are. I ask the members to vote no.
Any further discussion? Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chair Pawlowski, for your continued willingness to work on this. And I know Representative Hicks has also been a huge champion of the Fostering Independent Grant Program. So I appreciate that this is really a bipartisan effort. But I do think, members, that this is budget neutral. This is just a policy change of how money that's already been allocated is being spent, and we can do that in a policy bill. So to give comfort and encouragement to our foster youth, I would encourage you to vote yes now, because waiting till the policy bill comes to the committee and then goes to the floor, I just think now is the time. So let's act today. Please vote green.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Kern.
Curran votes no.
Kern votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 62 yeas and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Schultz moves to amend House File Number 4024, the first engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A6.
I recognize the member from Morrison, Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. In this bill, we have some of the definitions that help us outline the North Star Promise Act, a piece of legislation that was passed last year, but for the purposes of our debate right now, members, the North Star Promise was not a part of our original higher education bill last year, and thus we did not have the chance to thoroughly vet the details, the eligibility requirements for the North Star Promise Act. The North Star Promise Act, which has been certainly a topic of debate in our state, and exactly who it would benefit. As has been provided by Representative Robbins earlier today, we know that, that this benefits households in Minnesota and students in Minnesota who come from households who have less than $80,000 of combined income. But unfortunately, an oversight has been at play, which is what I am seeking to correct with this A6 amendment, Madam Speaker. This adds additional eligibility requirements to ensure that the people who benefit from this program, that they are Minnesota residents, that they are legally residing or lawfully present in Minnesota, especially as it relates to federal immigration purposes. That is the bill, members, because currently the way that the statute is in law, our tax dollars for the North Star Promise Act are going to benefit students who are here in Minnesota illegally, who have broken the law. And instead of benefiting Minnesota students who have grown up here, who are legal residents of Minnesota, our tax dollars are being used for the North Star Promise Act and delivering those additional aid payments and free college to people who are not here legally in Minnesota, which is why I ask for your support at this time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Discussion on the amendment. Representative Pawlowski.
First of all, Madam Speaker, the North Star Promise was part of the higher education budget bill last year. Secondly, there is a residency requirement for the North Star Promise. This amendment is not needed. I ask the members to vote no.
Further discussion. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This, once again, is all about the eligibility requirements because currently under law, people who are here in Minnesota illegally are using our tax dollars to go to college for free, which is in tune with the DFL majority's great attempts to take $10 billion worth of new taxes and increase spending in our state by over 36.5% in one biennium, and to place those dollars in the pockets of people here in Minnesota illegally, instead of helping Minnesota families, instead of helping Minnesota students. And for that reason, Madam Speaker, I ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Are there 15 hands? Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Will the chief clerk call the names of the members voting remotely?
Curran.
Curran votes no.
Curran votes no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 63 yeas and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, House File Number 4024, as amended.
Third reading. Any further discussion? I recognize the member from Wright, Representative McDonald.
Oh, here we go. Hello, hello. There we go. Sorry for the technical difficulty. Madam Speaker, Representative Pawlowski, I rise to support your bill for one reason. You're a darn good guy, and it's a great bill. And furthermore, I really wanted to have a good debate on the House floor because we won't be having much debate any further with Representative Pawlowski. And the McDonald-Pawlowski debate goes back many, many years. For you that may not notice, I am wearing a Minnesota session from Winona. Remember when they used to have the sessions down in Winona? This one was 1989 and worn by my father, who attended the session thanks to Representative Pawlowski. So this may be the last opportunity that I'm able to support Representative Pawlowski's bill because his next bill spends money, and we already spent enough money last year. So I probably won't support that one, Representative Pawlowski. So I wear this shirt in honor of my father, who served here for 14 years, from 1977 to 1990, and was a great friend of Representative Pawlowski, and he was to my father as well. Representative Pawlowski, you've been a great chairman, a great gentleman, and a great statesman, and it's an honor to be able to support the bill today and not take any heck from my district, of course, because I think this is a good bill that they'll agree as well. There are some components in the bill that certainly we have some concerns with, but hopefully we'll address that in your budget bill later, which I probably won't support anyway because it spends too much money and we spent too much money already last year. But Representative Pawlowski, again, I support your bill. Madam Speaker, thank you. Mr. Representative Pawlowski, thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Coulter.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank Chair Pawlowski for putting together a bill that I think really does build on the budget that we passed last year and demonstrates a commitment to reinvigorating higher education in Minnesota. We are showing that we in the legislature have the backs of our students and the colleges and universities that are helping them achieve success. One way that we are showing that is by including my bill regulating online program managers, or OPMs. OPMs are private, third-party, for-profit businesses that contract with schools to develop, deliver, or provide programs and services like instructional design, marketing and recruitment, and even advising and academic coaching. OPMs have been known to come in with big promises and slick sales pitches, but often fail to deliver. And the result has been deeply deceptive recruitment tactics that have misled students and saddled them with mountains of debt and credentials that weren't worth the paper they were printed on. And these aren't small operations either. 2021 data show that 8 companies accounted for half of the over 500 partnerships nationwide between OPMs and institutions. And that number of partnerships has only increased since, even as these already big companies consolidate further. Even more troubling is the fact that OPMs have relied on the names and reputations of established institutions despite employing their own staff without even a requirement to disclose that they, not the schools, are running these programs. In other cases, OPMs have been given significant decision-making authority and even intellectual property rights over creations of faculty of the institutions themselves. Oh, but there's more. OPMs most commonly make their money directly on the backs of students by taking a percentage of tuition, sometimes as high as 50%. The result being that students end up paying the price for non-transparent decisions often made by desperate administrators at schools that are struggling under significant pressure brought by big businesses that are, in a word, predatory, a term not just used by me, but by our current and former Minnesota State chancellors as well. Now, I'm not painting all OPMs with one brush, But given the stakes and given the experience of other states, we absolutely need to be proactive on reining in and prohibiting these pernicious practices. This bill does that, and it ensures that going forward, we'll have the information needed to hold OPMs accountable. Our state makes a significant public investment in higher education, but Minnesota families make significant personal investments too. This language shows that we are serious about protecting those investments, our colleges and universities, and our students. Thank you.
The member from Wright, Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Well, I'll be supporting this bill today. There are a lot of really good things in here. We're supporting families, so parents that go to college and get support. So if you've got children, if you are pregnant and you're going to college, there's support in there for people that are pregnant, for women that are pregnant. So it's really exciting for that too. If it's actually helping those with disabilities navigate a little bit easier and a little bit better, and someone that cares a lot about the disability community, as it's part of my family as well. He's in this room. I think that's a really great thing that we're supporting people with disabilities and helping them navigate and get a higher education. There are a lot of really good things. Something else that's really interesting too, a bill I did back in 2015 dealing with if a sexual assault had happened on a college campus, what do you do? And so there was an entire statewide policy. And so in this bill, we're actually expanding it and actually looking at more crimes. So not only a sexual assault, but what if you're stalked, or what if there's domestic violence? So we're actually tracking and taking care of people that are victims of other crimes as well. So we're expanding victims' rights and making sure that they're taken care of. So there's some really good things. We're taking care of some people that need to be taken care of. Obviously, we've talked quite a bit about the foster grant program, and there's some very personal stories in here about how that's impactful. We had incredible personal stories in committee about how impactful that was, and I look forward to actually solving that problem. We offered something on the floor here that could have solved it, but we're going to have to solve it in committee, so as we bring forth that budget bill. And thankfully, there is a solution outside of the joint targets, because you know that the higher ed joint target's only $500,000, and the foster grant program is a $5 million hole. So that's why we had to get a little creative, and I'm glad that that is the solution, something that we had raised and thought of and put forward. So I'm glad that there's a solution there. And thank you, Representative Robbins, for looking at that and digging into that as well. So members, I'll be supporting this bill because it does support all kinds of different people as they're trying to navigate going to higher education all across the board. There's a lot of really good things in here, and I'll be supporting it today. Thank you, members.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, to the author of the bill, Representative Pawlowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Representative McDonald, that's very kind of you to wear that sweater and wear it well, and also to remind us of your father. I served with Representative McDonald's father, and when Representative McDonald speaks, I couldn't distinguish him from his father unless I was looking at them. But if for those of you who didn't serve with Representative McDonald's father, his legacy is every time we open the session and we say the Pledge of Allegiance, that change to the House rules was done by Representative McDonald's father. So that is something that we remember him by every day. The higher education budget will be taken care of in committee. This is the policy bill, and I'm looking forward to a conference committee with the Senate. I ask for your support, and members, remember that the changes in this bill come about in part because we are now seeing an increase in enrollment across our systems. After a decade of decline, we're finally seeing increases in enrollment, and that's almost exclusively due to the legislation we passed in 2023. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members.
The clerk will take the roll. Members, please vote. The chief clerk will call the names of the members voting remotely.
Curran.
Curran votes aye.
Curran votes aye. Swazinski.
No.
Swazinski votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 100 yeas and 32 nays, the bill is passed as amended and it's titled agreed to.